is such a wonderful group because nobody likes to stop talking. I love it. It's the best way it should be. Thank you all for coming. One of the things that we try to do in the gallery, it doesn't always succeed, is to frame either conversations or experiences with music. And this is one of those extraordinary opportunities to do that with Rafi playing, and Ralf, the composer, is here. And the chain of connections from Jan Kollwitz to Ralf to this moment is rather extraordinary, and obviously makes me believe that somehow there is a plan that none of us understand when it works out. And it's worked out today in a wonderful way, so that we'll begin with Rafi talking a bit about the music itself. Ralf is here, sitting there, so those of you who do not know him, to find him sitting on the edge of, there it is, the waving hand. So that if you have questions, that's good. So now we can leave. But basically, if you, after the panel, which follows this immediately, then certainly meet with him, ask questions, responses to the music itself, because it invites that in a rather remarkable way that it's now set up. And we're just thrilled that you're here, both for the music and for the exhibition, and a kind of informal celebration of the artist's 90th year. My general view was that birthdays are nice, but years are even better. So we started this some time ago, certainly this weekend with dinner in his honor, and then yesterday again, and now this afternoon, where he will be part of a discussion with myself, Dr. Carl Herbert. Dr. Gary Phillips took ill this morning, so I had to call a relief pitcher. And so the pitcher is Rusty, who will join us after the presentation. So Rafi, thank you so much for being here. We've heard you any number of times, and I've heard the recording, so I'm anxious to hear it now. Thank you.
So thank you so much to Bernie and everyone here for making this event happen. It's such a privilege to be here, to be able to play here, kind of embedded in this amazing exhibit. So thank you again. I just thought I'd say a couple words about the piece and about the music. You'll have a chance to talk to Ralf a little more later. Unfortunately, I have to go fairly soon after the performance, which I greatly regret. But it's the busy life of a musician. So I thought I'd just talk a little bit about what you see before you. As you may notice right off, what I have here, this setup is rather unconventional for a solo cello piece. Probably, I would not be surprised if you had not seen anything like it before. I certainly had not. This is a piece that was written for me by Ralf about 20 years ago. And if you've had the good fortune of spending any time with Ralf, you'll know that his mind kind of operates on a different plane than mere mortals like myself. I mean to be actually very unironic. There's one of the things I respect tremendously about Ralf is there's so much conviction and commitment in everything he writes. And one of the remarkable things about this piece, as you'll hear, it's very, with a different composer, one might say spectralist. Like, it's very driven by gesture and by sound, and it doesn't have a kind of, natural, cohesive narrative. We'll get to that in a little bit, in the way that most of his other pieces do. And again, what's so remarkable is that if you listen to the next three pieces he writes after this, they're entirely different. Really, I think the way he approaches music and the way he approaches life is just so much for it's very bespoke, it's very much in each moment. And I think that's so much what this piece really is about. So what you see before you is actually not the complete piece. In fact, the complete piece is 8 of these. I have one of these music excerpts back here. It's 8 of these, and it comes also with a sort of rule book to help navigate through. But the way it's set up is such that it's not actually possible to play all of the music in a single performance. And so indeed, for this performance, I've kind of pared down and just put only on each stand what I will be using. And this is partly for my own convenience, but also so that maybe you can see a little bit better what I'm doing. If I have 8 of these giant barricades up, it's a little bit imposing. In any event, just to give a really, really brief synopsis of the piece in case you haven't had a chance to read the program notes. Essentially, there are kind of 8 stands. Each stand has music on it, arranged in a circle that corresponds to the circle of stands, and this is all sort of an expression of at the still point of the turning world from the 4 quartets of T.S. Eliot. And so there's a lot of formal stuff going on. But just in brief, the performer kind of chooses his or her own pathway through the piece, which is a really remarkable thing to get to do. You know, as performers, we shape we interpret the moment-to-moment narrative. We don't generally get to impose a kind of narrative on what we play. And one of the things, again, that's remarkable about this piece is you can approach it either really as a performer constructing a very specific sort of dramatic narrative or just kind of letting things happen arbitrarily. And again, I think that's very much in keeping with the piece. It's very much about finding meaning in every moment. Maybe they're connected, maybe they're not, you know? And so accordingly, there's a lot of silence in this piece. There's a lot of manipulation of sound, and then there's kind of a lot of liminal space between the edge of silence and sound. So I think that's about all I want to say about this right now, except that the version that I've chosen to perform today starts with at the still point, starting from the stand over here. So I'm going to spend a good part of the performance, as I would with any realization of this piece, with my back towards you. I'm hoping this will prove dramatic rather than vexatious, but we'll see what you think. So this is a version, one of a vanishingly, but not vanishingly, an incredibly large number of possible versions of this piece by Ralf Gawlick, At the Still Point of the Turning World.
both of you for allowing us to begin the afternoon or complete the afternoon, certainly share the afternoon, both with the notes and the silence that you invited us to be part of. The next sort of stage of what we're doing is a conversation which might well begin with silence, if possible, as an invitation. Some years ago I was invited to help plan a funeral, and I suggested to the rabbi that maybe to honor the individual we would have 60 seconds, otherwise known as a minute of silence. And after 25 seconds he got up immediately. People are very uncomfortable with silence. And so I think that we won't try to be silent for a minute as we reset up, but think about it in terms of both the music and the silence that was part of it. And then think about it in terms of looking at a single work of art, which Sam and Rusty and I will try to share with you. But think about experiencing it for yourself, quietly, in silence. And how does that register within you? So thank you so much, both of you, for allowing us to think differently about both sound, music, and hopefully art. So thank you, Rafi. So welcome again. I would pick up this little note that Ralf has written and just start with the last sentence. A sound is the present made audible. Silence is both the memory of a now and the anticipation of the next present. And I would begin by asking us to use art instead of sound and begin to think about it both in silence, what it means, and then does it in fact create the memory for the next memory. And I would say that Sam's art has consistently done that for me over 54 years of my adult life. And I'm enormously grateful for that and for the opportunity to just be together with you and Sam and with Rusty to talk about individual pieces, and at the same time, which is always true of being together with Sam, talk about pretty much that comes to his mind at any moment. And that's a joy, because it is, when we prepare for webinars, it's an interesting experience called rehearsal, and we usually talk about the weather, because the moment of the happening itself is where it does happen. Namely, that Sam brings to us the richness of his own experience and his knowledge and his insights into not only the painting that he has created for us to engage with, but also how he sees and experiences life in such a profound and meaningful way. So we're going to begin with one of the paintings. Hopefully we'll manage to get through 3, 4, 5, or 6 of them, depending on how long you stay awake and we stay awake. But I think it's more than worthwhile to invite you into Borrowed Identities, the painting on the easel at this point. We probably first did a Pears show 45 years ago at a minimum. Pears were Sam's major introduction to Israel, I think in 1967, 68, where he did an exhibition of 8 contemporary allegories, Pears in different states of being, if you will. And that became for him, and certainly for the Catalogue Raisonné, which has some 800 of 10,000 pieces devoted to the theme of Pears. So it is, for me, at least in looking at it, and certainly I would like Sam and Rusty to respond to it, it is a language that he uses to engage all of us in thinking about why we're here, what life is, how we interact with, and how we're responsible for ourselves and for others. Given that, Sam, it's your painting.
Well, life, and painting. Very mysterious things. It took me a lot of years to understand, after all, what I was doing with the pear, why I was doing it, and what the pear meant for me. It all began with some almost an anecdote. I was invited by, I think it was the Ministry of Culture in '67. I think it was before, or '66. It was before the 6 Days War in Israel, where I was. I was invited to participate in an international show in Paris, where Israel would be represented by 20 meters of wall, on which an artist will express his thoughts, feelings, whatever. And they said, well, you paint whatever you want. And I thought, oh my God, what am I going to tell the French people about me, about my life, and so on? So it started almost as a joke. I took the French word poire, which in some way means face, in some way means sucker. It's somebody who is brah. And it was used by the famous artist of caricatures and wonderful paintings, Daumier, to represent to the French people their king, Louis Philippe. So Louis Philippe was represented as a pear, and this is a very known image. And I thought I will take something which is almost a caricature, which is very funny, and I will try to invest it with some things which go much further. Because the idea in art is somehow to catch the attention of the viewer or listener, whatever, because there is so much proposed, and it's so difficult to catch the attention of somebody. So it all started with this French idea of the poire and all it meant. And then little by little, and throughout the years, I realized how very meaningful the fruit in the shape of the pear that hangs from a branch of a tree is about life on the whole, because the pear is a final result of an enormous administration that does its work. There are the roots in the ground. They have acid that takes out from stones minerals. Mm-hmm. And then there is the mystery of the pumping of the stuff that I don't think the science has ever discovered. And then it all goes to the branch. And then there is the flower. And then there is the insect that comes to visit another flower. And then there is finally the fruit in the form of almost a human, a female womb. And it contains in itself the continuation of life, the seeds. Which means the pear can disappear, somebody can eat it, a bird can eat it, and if we are lucky, somebody picks it up and we buy it in the supermarket. But there is something in the cycle of life that this represents so well, and it also, because of its shape, its morphological shape, it connects us to ourselves. So then it can be injected with all kinds of meanings that I have. But I won't go on right now, because otherwise I will keep you here completely falling asleep, so I will...
No, I think it's a perfect segue to Rusty, who in his earlier life did in vitro fertilization. As a physician for some 30 years, not of pears, but he did create sometimes pears as twins. But in any event, separate from that, Rusty, how do you think about or respond to what Sam said as this being a generative shape as well?
It certainly is. I happen to have a fondness for the egg shape, and so I've, as you know, collected many paintings and photographs with eggs in them, but the pear is almost a richer form, if you will. It's almost a maternal form. And the maternal form, for most of us, carries the concept of future generations, and Sam captures that in many of his paintings, the idea that this is what's going to go on beyond or not in many of the paintings, or the idea of trying to hold the pair together. But it all resonates with the humanness. There's something incredibly human about the pair in Sam's work. And, you know, Sam will say he doesn't know exactly where his paintings are going to go when he starts. And I suspect that there's this element of humanness that somehow enters into your paintings, Sam, as you start them, and becomes that sort of symbol of what is the human, maybe, what is humanity, and humanity's ability to stay alive.
I just want to go back to this painting since I was unsuccessful the first time, and ask you to talk just a bit about the notion of borrowed identities. It's an image that appeared in, I think, the first body of paintings we had.
No.
So the egg shape being the texture of a pear, and the pear actually the shape of an eggshell. And even to the sense that it is fractured and the liquid of the egg is pouring out. So it is, for me, whenever I've seen that image, maybe 3 or 4 times over the years, it always is this one enigmatic image, and at the same time, it becomes relevant at each time I've seen it. So today, in terms of people seeking their identity, all of the issues in this country around transgender, about being free to both be who you are, who you think you are, and to be allowed to do that. Totally, 40 years ago, or 50 years ago when I first saw the painting, not an issue for anyone. So the notion of borrowed identities is something I'd like to hear you think about with us.
Well, I must say I thought today a lot about it. First of all, because I knew that I was going to speak here today, but also something very special happened to me this morning. Really something very, very special. My good friend Rimantas, who is sitting there, the gentleman with the white hair, has written a book about the Christians who have saved a small group of Jews, among whom I was included. And the lady that sits next to him translated it into German. And I was able to read it because I have no knowledge of Lithuanian. And this morning I was blown away by learning some facts about my own life, about the people who were around me and so on, that I didn't know. And actually, the question of identity, completely unrelated to that painting, suddenly came to me. Because, I mean, I have an incredible number of identities. And I was thinking about my Catholic identity. And this also has determined very much my thoughts on religion. I have already said it many times, just to calm you down, I'm not a Catholic. I am a God-fearing atheist. But there was a time in which, because my mother had an aunt who was converted when she was very young, and who was very instrumental in saving us, and because I was hidden in a convent when I was 7, 8 years of age, with the wonderful nuns were teaching me to pray, were teaching me everything about how it is to be a good Catholic. When I later managed to survive what happened to the convent and so on, it's a very, very long story, and if any one of you is more interested, I have written it down in a book. When I got to the ghetto, I had in my pocket, hidden from the other boys and so on, a little picture of Jesus. Because I was sure that dying is not a very big deal, because then you go to the paradise and you go with other kids and you sing hymns and so on. And then in '44, we were liberated. My mother and my father was murdered, my grandparents were murdered, aunts, uncles, and so on. We were the 250 Jews that got back to Vilna, that met in Vilna or in Vilnius in 44, in I think around the mid of July, when it was occupied by the Russians. And it was a question of surviving. Where do you find food? Where do you find this thing? My mother was very busy with it. She was also very busy running around, knowing if she can meet people, maybe they will tell her something that happened to, if they know anything about her husband, if he's alive or not, and so on. I, in those months, used to go to churches. I was very, very impressed, first of all, by the smell, the wonderful, almost like being high. And then there were all these wonderful paintings of horror all around me, made me feel comfortable. A martyrdom of various Catholic saints, people who had their kishkes, or I don't know how, taken out from them, and so on. It was fascinating, and I did it very much in secret from my mother, because when we were liberated, she told me, now religion, you can forget about it, you don't have to, and it took me some time. It took me some time to get over that, but also to understand how religion was important in the history of humans, how it was creating communities, how it was helping people to get together and to define who were their friends and who were their enemies. And religion was so important in creating wars, in the killings, and so on. So all that religion has created for humanity was beyond me. And I realized I'll just leave it to somebody else to deal with, and I will paint paintings.
Fabulous. Well, the notion of borrowed identities, just briefly, so we can move on, where Sam uses the pear shape and paints it as an eggshell, and then that the pear itself is the texture of the pear, and it's a bitten egg, essentially. And for me, the nice aspect of this painting that I don't remember from others is the suspension of the ropes in the space, where something outside the frame is somehow either manipulating them, holding them, creating a mystery that goes with the borrowed identities within this. Afterward, what I would invite you to do, not now, because we have many more works to look at, is to look at this painting and interpret it for yourself, because I'm useless. I only can share with you how I see the painting. But there are many, many other works in the show that the invitation is exactly the same for. What we're going to look at next is from there, and Lily's coming with it around the edge.
Before you take that away,
Yeah.
I think just to point out that it's very obvious that the egg cup is broken. And it's suspended by what Bernie pointed out, something above. Where does that go? How is it suspended? But it's broken. And so much of what we deal with is, where are we once things are broken? So the pear is a broken eggshell. The egg, which has become a pear, has been eaten partially, and the egg cup is broken. So how does one put this together? And I think, just briefly, the concept of the music as small pieces resonated so much, Sam, with your pieces, because you have pieces in all of your paintings that are like metaphors, and just as that music could be played in different ways and would bring a different resonance emotionally to us, Sam's pieces put together in different paintings resonate differently. So there'll be a pear, or there'll be a broken cup, or a tree, or a tree that's cut off. All these are images, and then when they're put together different ways, they resonate differently. But the only way you get to them is to go into them. So the only reason we can capture that music this afternoon that was just wonderful was to let go and let it go, let us go with it. The same, I think, is true of these paintings. So you let yourself go into them, and there's so much in there.
Perfect, thank you. So the painting is called Ongoing something? There you go, Ongoing Game. And this is, I thought, a wonderful opportunity to share pretty much what Rusty was just saying, that the both images, subject matter in Sam's universe continues to get rearranged, and in the rearrangement, it becomes a totally different set of questions. So this particular image with the pairs apparently present, and then within a number of them, the chessboard, and some pawns littered around the field with this accumulation of pairs. And then one in the back is kind of a metal protector for the queen. So the notion of a theme that, again, chess, just as pairs, is one of the most important, wrong word, most important, but among the most important themes that Sam has created. Probably the 400 or 500 images on the catalog raisonné, again, that both Siggy and Cecilia have been responsible for making available online. And if ever you have an interest in pursuing pairs or chess or birds or clocks, just type it in and it shows up for you in the multitude of opportunities to experience it. So Sam, it's your painting.
Well, yeah, it looks like one of my paintings. Chess inevitably is related again because of my biography, is related to my stepfather. In the refugee camp, my mother met a man who lost his wife and 2 children in one of the camps. He was from Kaunas. They married. He was a very sweet man, my stepfather. There was a problem I had with the idea of a stepfather because somehow my knowing that my father was murdered and so on, it was really not a very easy thing to replace him. And then he was a very traumatized person, but he was a very sweet man, and he was a great chess player. He was a great bridge player. He was the captain of the Lithuanian international bridge team and so on before the war. And sometimes he was sitting quietly, and I asked him something. He said, "Excuse me, I'm playing chess." Playing chess? What? There is no chessboard. There is nothing. He was playing chess. He was playing chess against himself in his mind. He could play very complicated games. He could also replay some games of Botvinnik or of Lasker. He had them in his head. He had a kind of an absolutely photographic power of look at text, get them in, and keep them seemingly forever. So for me, wherever you can take something and you look inside, which is not always possible, you can also find the mystery of the chess. So my chess paintings are very much connected to that mystery of chess existing not as a board, a physical board, not as physical pawns, but a whole game of war against war, and war was very important to me. Survivor of one war, I was almost killed in the Israeli army by stepping on a field of mines, and because I just wanted to see a Syrian tank there, and there was something hanging. I was not sure if it's a human being or just something. But anyway, wars are very important for the humans to diminish the population of this globe. Look, while we are sitting here, imagine what goes on at this very moment in Ukraine. So, well, why did I go to Ukraine from that painting? I don't know.
War.
Chess
And war. But the other thing is that Sam alluded to his stepfather as having all these games go on in his mind. if you can use your imagination to see 150 paintings in work, and then know where you are in each one of those paintings, and when you come back to it, even though they're not blood relatives, the ability to carry something in your mind, certainly you inherited from him. And so when people keep saying to me, so how many paintings does he make a year? What's he working on? And the reality is that he's playing 150 chess games at one time and knowing where he is with those and those moves. The other thing about chess is, from the point of view of the gallery over the years, it is in so many ways the easiest access point for everyone that sees Sam's works to move into the paintings. Because most people do know the game, even if they don't play it any longer, and they know it as a game of war, and they know it by the terminology of sacrificing your pawns, of your queen being re-enhanced, and so forth. There is all this discussion around it, all of the words that go with the game that make it a perfect metaphor for them to understand at the beginning of the conversation with Sam that what he's talking about is the human condition and how we as human beings continue to abuse it. Rusty, thoughts?
Yeah, I would further accent. I mean, Sam creates these works, and they come from. And people say, "Well, what is he saying? And there's no one thing that Sam says. Sam says to you what you bring to his painting to some extent, but he uses these images as things that you can connect to, and he sort of tricks and pulls you in. I don't know if he tells you that, but he wants you to come into his paintings. So I look at this and I say, wow, there's a board, but there's no checkers on it anymore. The checkerboard for a chessboard is now rolled up and inside individual pairs. So what does that mean? Does that mean that what happens on a chessboard is personal, and that these pairs or people or create what happens? War. The pawns are always the losers, mostly in Sam's work, because they are the people that you can expend. Unfortunately, we have that concept in war. And the protected queen or the king is always in the background, sort of not necessarily in the greatest danger. So for me, this is the internalization of the board into the pairs is fabulous. And it's like, okay, how do I get my head around what is that? What is that for me? And then there's a group of them, and the queen is protected. But it's another beautiful rendition using images that each of us is free to engage with on our own personal basis.
With the upper painting, I'd love to look at. Next, thank you. So this is not an ideal way for you to move paintings around your house, but it's helpful to us to be able to go from painting to painting and have an opportunity to look at them somewhat carefully. For me, one of the most wonderful things is to see Sam essentially using his vocabulary, his lexicon of images, whether it happens to be chess and pairs, in this case, birds and pairs, and to talk a bit about that, Sam, because first of all, the color in this is absolutely beautiful. There's a richness to this painting just visually that's so engaging, and then we're stuck with it.
Well, I must say you caught me here, because I wonder myself, what does this painting mean? I mean, the birds, the colorful birds of paradise, going to the right, going to the left, they are somehow present there, although there is a little rainbow from which they have stolen all the color. So I think the rainbow is something for me, is as a symbol of hope. Because I don't know, since I've studied the Bible and I read the Bible so much, the end of the destruction of humanity in the times of the big flood was the rainbow, was a hope. It will never happen again. But then very strange things happen, very unnatural things happen. Noah and his daughters, and most probably many of us are descendants of that encounter. And what the meaning that we give to things, and how we can somehow misunderstand them, or on the contrary, enrich them with a different meaning. So this is the mystery of that painting for me. How do I connect the birds to something else? And I must say that in some way I am also the product of the history of art, because there was somebody who did such things in a magnificent way. What's his name? Escher?
Yeah.
He did birds that become something else, and so on.
Evolve.
So I am aware of that, and I must say that all I do in painting is somehow also the result of the enormous input that has been put into me by the presence of all the treasures of art that are in the world, and which today are so easily accessible. I mean, in the days of the COVID, I was sitting in front of my computer and visiting all the museums of the world, and having on my screen paintings of Bosch or Bruegel or whatever that suddenly belonged to me. I mean, what can I say? Maybe I should stop.
No, well, one of the nice things is the acknowledgement that we all come from something,
Yeah.
and then take it into ourselves and then transform it through our own personal experience. And I think your work, as much or more than any other artist I've ever worked with or seen, is exactly that. You are a result of all that you have experienced and seen, but those elements that resonate with who you are then become part of your vocabulary. Rusty, thoughts?
The vocabulary here, just in brief, birds, for you'll see in Sam's paintings many times, represent flight, which means escape. Can we get away? Not always, and not all of the, as we've said, all of Sam's icons get used in different ways, but not uncommonly. The bird is the hope. Most times the bird, if you look at it, can't fly, so it's not going anywhere, but the hope that maybe it could get away is represented in the bird. That's one of the most beautiful set of Pears, and the most beautiful representation of a rainbow that I've seen Sam do, because most of Sam's rainbows lose color. They're broken. They're not connected to that wonderful promise that supposedly the Lord gave us, that with that rainbow there's a covenant with the human race. These are not. These are Pears, humans perhaps, mankind, wrapped in these colors, which is perhaps not only beautiful, but one of the more optimistic and heartwarming paintings of what mankind may be encountering, just for me. By the way, all these things are just what I'm like one of you, only I sit up here. So for me, that's what I see in this. It's just gorgeously painted. Sam's doesn't tell you enough. If you go with Sam to a museum, it's like you have the best art history teacher in the world. There's hardly a painter Sam doesn't know, or why they did what they did. He's phenomenal. So he's giving us in his paintings not just some things, but a catalog of information that he's absorbed over the years. It's a phenomenal, wonderful thing.
We're going to look actually at this piece, Paolo, because it's something new, the drawing, so to speak, drawing, that is new to Sam's technical repertory. And it's important for those of you who have the catalog. If you don't, please take it, because in it you'll see ink, crayon, mixed media, and then you'll see procreate. And it's not a biblical term. It is from the contemporary world of computers. During the recent time when his leg was not holding him up so well, he was in a reclining chair working on an iPad or tablet. And I wanted him to talk a bit about that process and the way that he has been using it incredibly productively, because he showed us the tablet the other day with endless numbers of images, and the conversation that he's in consistently through his art about the meaning of life continues electronically. Sam?
Yes, well, when we moved to the States some 30 years ago, I developed a very strong friendship with Robert Weimeyer. He was much younger than myself, but we became kind of father, son, father, friend, whatever. I mean, he was my computer guru. He told me, he was an electronic engineer, besides having also, I think, a doctorate in Mandarin or something like that. He was an extraordinary human being. And he said, you must have computers. You cannot be an artist today without a computer, and all your work photographed and put into your computer. So he introduced me to Photoshop, and he said, you can paint paintings with Photoshop. I tried Photoshop. It was very clumsy, it was very slow, it was very this and that. I said, no, I do it much faster. But
And I'm sure you believe that.
years later, many years later, just we are coming to our days, I was stuck with this leg that I don't know, was the recipient of some wrong information sent by a nerve that was stuck between two vertebrae. I don't know, but anyway, I had to sit, and how could I not work? Any day that I did not paint was taken away from my life. I am a kind of a 7-on-7 painter. And I'm very fortunate that I have a wife that accepts it. She loves to read books while I am stuck with my paintings. So I had to paint, and my daughter, who is a designer, she suggested that I try Procreate. She said, it's really something that has many possibilities on the tablet. And there are artists today, there's Hockney, who is famous for his work on tablets. So you have the tablet, you know, that the iPad on which you can draw and on which you can do things, and then there is Procreate, is a wonderful system that gives you possibilities to turn your Apple Pencil into something like 1,000 different brushes and 1,000 different colors and transparencies and this and that. The only thing is that you have to keep in mind every time before you're going to do something, what brush you want, what color you want. You have to make decisions, but yet it is a fantastic instrument. And it is something like, what can I say, a pianist who suddenly discovers that he can learn to play also the violin. And for me, it was that. It is just yet another instrument. When you think about it, art is created by a canvas or a paper, by some colorful powders, by some medium that holds them together, that sticks them to the painter, to the painting, by some brushes and so on. And it's not very different from the iPad, on which you project. If you arrive to learn and control this thing, you project your vision, you project what you want. I am not yet 100% in control of what I want to do, but I have made quite a lot of progress, and I mean, I really am, if you have never met him before, the old dog that learned new tricks.
And we're the beneficiaries of those tricks. Rusty, some of your thoughts?
I just think it's really wonderful. There are other examples with more color in them here in the gallery that you should look at carefully. But Sam stayed very true to the process of creating as he worked with this new technology. I asked him whether you cut and paste. No, I mean he'll. I guess you'll copy one set of an image of Pears that he's already created, move it to another screen so he can work on it further, but doesn't use the other funky tools that allow you to distort. It's very true to the stylet being the paintbrush and the end piece being very similar to his paintings.
Absolutely, but I just wanted to introduce you to it and to suggest that you either use the catalog or the price list, which will then point them out to you, because it's not so easy to, even at this point, recognize the distinction between the two. So, were you able to get that one? Thank you. So I thought as a kind of finale that we would take Revolt, which is the title of the painting sort of slowly coming around, to see how, in a way, Sam collects and uses those objects both in his own vocabulary and in the world around him, and then based upon that continues to create extraordinary paintings. I've seen a few of these actually on my screen rather than in person, and then this particular painting came as part of this collection. So, welcome to a new world of Samuel Bach, for me certainly, and hopefully for you. The Pears are part of this, but the Pears are certainly, I would say, put upon at a minimum. But really wanted to hear Sam talk about it because I've just enjoyed the painting enormously throughout the few days that the show has been up.
What can I say? You want me to reveal all my secrets?
We don't have that much time, so it's okay.
I need a lot of time to explore what they are and so on. I don't know. I don't know, maybe it's because of my age. I have an enormous respect to this level in which you realize that there is something in art that you will never understand. For which there are no words, and it just happens, and it is just an incredible gift that suddenly you have brushes and colors, and you can make things, and you can destroy the things, and you can let them be, and you can somehow project them and share them with other people. You can have a vision that you invent, and then you can share it. There is something absolutely extraordinary in possessing this ability, and I have absolutely no idea how much my mother paid for me to have it. So I would ask Rusty to go on speaking about this painting because I have no words.
It's this is truly a Sam painting, so I understand those to be your tools, Sam.
It's a funny painting.
Those are your brushes.
It's a funny painting. You can laugh looking at it. Yeah.
And somehow the one large tube of paint has sort of become part of that pear, and now the pear is skewered by one of your brushes. So I'm not really going to venture too much into this, to be frank. It is some expression clearly of a encountering with the creative process. What is it about paints and brushes and things that gets, and I think what I hear you saying is it's all tied up inside.
It's all tied up. Yeah.
That's where it is there.
You're right. And I must say that one morning I came into my atelier, or how would you say, studio. And I said, well, I must make an order there with all those tubes that some of them are partly dry, some of them I started, some of them have so much paint on top of them that I cannot even read what they contain. And I started to deal, and while I was trying to put a note, I was thinking, my goodness, how much is contained in these tubes? So many trees and pears and houses and chess pieces, and those tubes contain so much. And what I am doing is just, I am letting them out. I liberate all these things which are in my tubes. And I liberate it by means of using brushes, of using mediums, of whatever.
I think that's an absolutely lovely way to describe revolt. So it's not revolting, but it really does take us to a different place. And also, just think about 50, 60, 70 years of creation.
80.
So 80, sorry.
80.
Sorry to understate it. And to realize that that process is still going on. So the encounter with things that he's familiar with, the Pears, things that he uses, the brushes, the tubes, and suddenly they meet. So the idea that Sam somehow has stayed in touch with a part of him that he doesn't control, which is that which enables him to create these images, is a real gift to all of us. And I think that it may be called sanctified symbol, but I would say we're gratified for that, not in a sanctified way, maybe unsanctified. But being that said, these are in many ways, and Brother Thomas said it always, and you said it a bit the other way, that the art is not complete until it is shared with others. And so I think what we were inviting you into is the beginning of a conversation for you and the paintings. You can talk to Sam, talk to Rusty, talk to me, talk to Singing Cecilia, but the real action that takes place between you and the paintings. And this idea of being able to come together with you, also to have it framed by the music. Ralf, again, applause to you for you had given me a CD of it and I had listened to it, but having it performed live in the context of this exhibition is an entirely different experience, and I think that probably, hopefully, is satisfying to you as well. Sam, Rusty, both of you, it's like the Ed Murrow Show. Thank you much for being with us.
Thank you very much.